Among the most successful coaches in high performance hockey is Dave Gwyn. Whether you measure success by games won, tournament championships, or players committed to university programs in Canada or the United States, Dave's success likely predates his time with the Toronto Arrows and most recently with Durham West Lightning. Based in the western part of Durham region and arguably the arch rival of the Whitby Junior Wolves, coached by previous Exit 425 guest Gary Soper. U22 Elite is the preeminent level of the girls' minor system in Ontario. The league involves teams from Windsor to Ottawa, and young women from this league go to NCAA and U Sport teams, national U18 teams, and there are always several grads on the national team. There are only 2 teams in Durham, both highly successful franchises. This year, Dave's team has commitments to hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of scholarships to schools, including Ivy Leagues, and consistently top-ranked academic and hockey programs. This is the product of his 4 for 40 goal for each of his players. Dave joins us today at the end of the regular U22 Elite season and actually now 2 wins into his playoffs. And Dave Gwyn, welcome, and thanks for meeting me here at Exit 425. Today's guest at Exit 425
in the main corridor of Exit 425.
Local politicians to connect with families.
What are some unique challenges?
Thanks very much, Steve, for having me.
Exit 425. It's where we live.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here today.
Dave, you've had a remarkable career coaching high-performance hockey. Could you just bullet point some of the key hockey roles that you've had?
Yeah, started a long time ago. A good friend of mine who's about 6 years older than me asked me to be involved, and I was a little green and only about 4 years older than the players. So I first started out in the GTHL, coaching major midget AAA with the Wexford Raiders. I was an assistant coach for a couple of years, and then a head coach for a couple of years of that team. And after that, I think it was 5 years total in the GTHL. Someone that I coached asked if I'd be interested in coaching female hockey, which I didn't know a lot about. And so came over and had a couple seasons with the Scarborough Sharks with their U18 program. And from there moved on to coach Etobicoke's, at that time, PWHL team. For a couple of seasons, and then moved to the Arrows for 12 years. And then now been with Durham West, I think 4. I've also was with Team Ontario as a head coach for 3 years, assistant coach for 2 years, and with the national program under 22 for 2 seasons. So yeah, that kind of recaps my hockey stuff. More than anything, just been a support for young players and people over the years, trying to help out and give back to the game that I love. And the most important thing for me is trying to help with some life skills along the way. So yeah, been a great journey. 25 years, I think now. Goes by quick.
That's amazing. And you barely look older than that anyway. So there you go. From the coaching training perspective, what is your balance of skill development and team tactics and skills in practice? Given the high level of athletes that you're dealing with, one might expect that you don't have to do a lot of skills. And then what is the performance criteria that you look for in your players?
Yeah, so for me, I think the game has really changed. I when I first started in female hockey, and I would say, say the first 10 years, I would say the skill, we spent a lot more time on skill. I don't think the players spent as much time on skill outside of the rink. And I don't think, frankly, I don't think their skill was super high. And so I think in the past 10 years, though, that's really changed. I would challenge you that most of our athletes spend as much time on skill as any male counterpart of theirs, often going to, a couple skill sessions a week outside of our practices. So while I would still say 25% of our time in practice time is dedicated to that, we're not unlike a college program. We have 2 practices a week. So I think the challenge now is helping the players understand how that skill fits into them understanding the game and where they fit in how to get up and down the ice as part of a team and as part of a unit of 4, 5, or 6, depending on the situation. So I would say that we spend about 20 to 25% of our time on skill, And then the balance, I would say 50-50, 50 on tactical stuff, and then probably 50 on the team play. And part of that's because I honestly believe that as they get to college, the team play and the tactical stuff is so important. And I don't think that's emphasized enough. And I think our athletes can definitely watch a little bit more hockey, which would help with that as well. In terms of athletes, I break it down. It's there's lots of catchphrases, and I would be remiss if I didn't say the 4 for 40, which I know we'll talk about. That is a borrowed phrase originating from Ken Dufton, so I just want to give him the proper credit, and we can get into that. But just was thinking about that. But in terms of athletes, humble, hungry, and smart to me are the three words that I use all the time with our staff. Right. There's a lot given to these athletes nowadays and a lot in social media, and we just want to make sure they remain humble. The hungry piece for us is, with scholarships and or, some of these things being given to athletes so early now, we want to make sure they remain hungry and not just be satisfied with what they already have or what they've already been given. And I do believe they've earned it, but at the same time, there's another side of that. And then for me, smart, and it goes back to what I just mentioned, which is, are they watching hockey? Are they a student of the game? Do they want to? I often use the phrase, do you want to play hockey or do you want to be a hockey player? Those are kind of the avenues I look at for sure.
How do you pick your captains? Is the captain always the best player, or the alternates? Are they always the best players on the team, or just how do you pick your captains?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things. Traditionally, we have a process of picking captains and assistants, and it's a joint venture. So first of all, there's an application process. It definitely has nothing to do with how good a player. I mean, we obviously believe in all these players or they wouldn't be on the team. So, but there's an application process because I found earlier in my coaching career, sometimes captains and assistants were being awarded to kids that just frankly didn't want them. They weren't interested in them. They may have been very good at them or not good at them, but it just isn't something they wanted. So first there's an application process. Then there's a formal process where they speak in front of the team. It's basically why they're interested in position, how they'll represent themselves in the team, and why they would be a great candidate. And then ultimately there is a vote. It's not a public vote. And then the staff takes all that information into consideration and makes the final decisions. But I will tell you, breaking news tells me that, going forward, we will no longer be issuing captain's assistants at this level. We're just finding the payoff is not worth what the actual, what we get out of it from the athletes. And it just ends up causing a little bit more controversy. I've talked to a number of coaches around the league that kind of support this. And so we're just going to try and focus on developing everyone as a leader, as we've always tried to do, but moving forward, just kind of developing everyone as a leader. So, but that's traditionally how we've done it.
How does that work with the officials then?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we can still give out on the game sheet. It's easy for us to designate that, and without getting myself in too much trouble here, I'm not so sure that that's going to be an issue in our league. I think often if sending a player over, they'll come over to the bench anyways and stuff like that. But yeah, we'd have to find some type of rotating system, but it just more would point out the fact that we don't need to designate someone for an entire season.
Your current roster of players have some pretty incredible university experiences ahead of them. How does this reflect your 4 for 40 goal for your athletes?
Yeah, so the whole idea behind 4 for 40 is that those next 4 years are going to set them up for the next 40 years of their life. And so the idea is hoping, that we can in some small way help them prepare for that. And that's by generally the life stuff that comes along the way. Don't get me wrong, we're here to help them learn the game of hockey. But at the same time, as you said, these are very talented young players. So I find as much as we do, I would say 30% of our job or our responsibility is that. I think the other 70 is making sure that they have valuable life lessons along the way. Things like, knowing the importance of being on time, being responsible, for their actions and holding themselves accountable. ideas, the fact that just being a great teammate, that kind of stuff along the way, right? So that's to us what it's always about. Like, universities aren't coming to us as coaches and saying, hey, do you think this kid's a good player? Like, that's their job. They're going to evaluate their hockey skills. With us, it's more about what are they like as a person? What are the things that make them tick? What are the things that, they need to work on, that kind of stuff. But it's more about the people part of it, as opposed to like, their stick handling or their skating. They're evaluating all that on their own. They don't need our opinion on that.
How do you promote your players to colleges and university? And do you see this as a critical role for a U22 elite coach?
Yeah, my wife would tell you that that's the part people don't see, is people don't see the amount of time away from the rink that is spent on at this level, and then I'm sure U18 to a certain degree as well. But in terms of promotion, there's some simple stuff. Obviously, we have a fairly active social media. We have a website where all these resources are found, but I think being a little proactive in terms of like once the roster's selected, gathering the information and getting that out to coaches right away, so that they're certainly not waiting around until September to find out who's on the team and where people are at and that kind of stuff. I'm not a believer like, Dave Gwyn, or any coach in this league for that matter, gets these people these positions or scholarships. I think these kids earn them. They work incredibly hard. They sacrifice a lot of things. All we simply do is try and have some conversations and expose them. Now, I do think, you mentioned Gary Soper, who I have the utmost respect for, great coach, great person. I think it's hard to make up experience, right? So when Gary's been in the league as long as he's been here, and I've been here for, I think, 15, 16 years, like, you just get to know coaches organically, and you get to have those conversations and build relationships and trust, right? I think the other thing is we've been really fortunate over the years to have good players. And so when you have good players, you get to go to the best events, right? You get opportunities that maybe some other clubs don't. For example, next year we're once again have a Division I trip where we're playing Ohio State and Robert Morris. Those are unique advantages that not every team and every program will get. But that's not because of Dave Gwyn. That's because of our players before us and the work they've done, and our alumni that is very strong and continues to give back. But yeah, just kind of having conversations and getting information out, and then the players do the work and showcase themselves, and good on them for that.
How can players gain the attention of U22 elite coaches in Durham or any team in the league? And do you think that league with the PWHL now, the other PWHL,
Yeah.
do you think the U22 Elite will continue to be the principal pathway now for women's hockey?
Yeah, well, I mean, as things are set up currently, you kind of have to go through college and then come back to the professional women's league. So I do think this is the Premier League. I think there's a few reasons for that. I think it's the only league that I'm aware of that actually mimics a college schedule and or a college, kind of training situation where, you have leagues and playoffs and championships and the rivalries and all that kind of stuff. It's not pro tournament based now that we're playing full games with, very similar, if not identical, rules to the NCAA. I think there's some small differences. I think it's a great preparation league. So I think it will continue to be that. I know at times, lots of people like to talk about what's wrong with the league. Listen, I have opinions too, but I think there's lots right with this league. And I think we need to focus on that and what an amazing job it does for these young people. So that's that. I think in terms of how they can get the attention, again, strictly my opinion, first of all, speak for yourself, right? I don't know any U22 coach that wants to hear from mom and dad about how great a season you're having and everything you've done. It makes a world of difference when a player reaches out, whether that's by email or text or whatever they're comfortable with, and says, "Hey, can we have a conversation?" Or "Hey, here's what I'm currently doing. I'd love an opportunity to kind of get involved with Durham or whatever it is." And obviously we can continue the conversation from there. So I think representing yourself and learning to speak for yourself, again, great life lessons, and ultimately what you're going to have to do as you get into, not only the next level, but the real world. aka job. So that's great. And then I think ultimately it's the same stuff, in terms of when you are representing yourself, making sure your body language is in check, you're being a great teammate, and being very open and honest and transparent. Again, when I get an email that tells me, how many goals someone scored and how great, and doesn't mention much about their team or what they're doing to help the team, I look into that, right? Because for me, there is an individual portion of the game, but ultimately this is a team sport, right? So that's super important. But definitely reach out, like we just talked about, advocate for yourself, speak to coaches. We're human beings. We put our pants on the same way as everyone else. I definitely am willing to have conversations at any point. So yeah, that would be my advice there.
Well, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today, like I have done with politicians for many years, whether it's in a classroom or on this podcast. The idea of humanizing a coach. So often we see coaches sitting or standing on the bench and off with their team and that sort of thing, and maybe a player might feel a little intimidated normally about reaching out to you. So I appreciate you doing this, and just you saying that, I think is a valuable tool for players that are out there. What's the best part of coaching for you? And maybe pick out a highlight or two.
Yeah, it's always tough to pick out a highlight. I always tell people, a lot of people on the outside that I speak with that aren't coaches, but maybe they've been parents, or they hear stories, they talk, they always want to jump to, maybe some of the challenges over the years. But I've had, so many good, memories and years that, losing count. So things have been great. Highlights for me are always just watching young people achieve goals that they set for themselves, and that could be, a weekly goal that going into a game or a series of games or practices, and it can also obviously be getting that college commitment or making Team Ontario or making the national program. But I think the highlights as I get older and go through this more and more, like I've been so fortunate to be invited, to several weddings and kind of post hockey things, that the idea that these players would even think about me is pretty humbling. So I think those are the highlights for me. I've been lucky to been part of several championship teams, but I never got involved in hockey for that reason. And those are things that fade, right? So for me, the just watching people become young adults and then growing into, like, I'm older now, so I have players now that have like four kids, 5 kids, have been married a number of years. So, but just watching them become, adults and moving into families and stuff like that, it's just, I can't tell you what a smile that puts to my face. So that's that stuff for sure.
That's awesome. And my life spent in education, kids don't remember what you actually teach them. They and for you, they won't necessarily remember that certain plays or set plays that maybe you've talked about, but you cared and you became part of their life, an important part of their life. And what a great reward to be invited to significant life events like that. So that's awesome. That's really cool. You want to go as far as you can with the playoffs, and I mentioned at the beginning that you guys are you've won 2 games in a best 3 out of 5, and you want to go to provincials and do well there. But what lies beyond that for Dave Gwyn?
Yeah, I think what's interesting for Dave Gwyn is that I don't think people realize that Dave Gwyn's a father and and an engineer and a husband, and this is not my full time job, and I get that a lot. I think it comes with coaching at this level. It is a big commitment, and you're seeing more people like Jeff Hadaway and Gary Soper who have kind of moved on from their primary career, and they're continuing to coach or coming back and coaching, and it's becoming a lot. I'm here to say that Dave Gwyn's not leaving today. There's lots of rumors and we deal with those. But there's no question that I'm certainly coming to near my end as a full-time head coach, right? We have a great staff that's in place right now, and we're super fortunate. Durham West does a fantastic job from U13 all the way up in their high performance program here. We have great people like Ben Davis and Pat Taggart running teams that um, this program and this association is in such powerful hands, led by Craig Mackinac as the VP of Rep, and I'm just one piece. So I have no grand illusions that Durham West needs me or anything like that. But right now, I'm here. My daughter is 5 years old. She absolutely has 20 best friends and great mentors, and that's really awesome for her. And I most importantly, the rock of our family, my wife Ashley, supports this and continues to drive me being involved as well. So I would say, couple more years maybe for sure, but what lays beyond that, I don't know. I mean, I kind of take it 1 year at a time for sure.
That's awesome. Thanks for taking time today to meet me at Exit 425. And how can people get in touch with you and maybe find out more about the Durham West and U22 Elite program in general?
Yeah, I think there's some decent information on our program on our website, dwjunior.com, and my contact information is certainly on there. If someone wants to have a conversation, always happy to do that, or answer questions about our program or like that. And I'd like to thank you for having me on the program. It's been great, and I'll always enjoy speaking to you and anytime.
That's awesome. Thanks so much.
No problem.